Before we jump into this week's episode of the Major Pain Podcast, I will remind you that I am not a medical professional. Please do not take any medical action based off what you hear on this podcast without first consulting your doctor. I'll also say that if you are enjoying Major Pain, we would love your support to keep the show going. There are several great ways to do so. The first is our ongoing Patreon campaign. Through Patreon, you can subscribe with monthly financial contributions that directly support this show's creation. We have 3 tiers of support: the $2 per month supporter tier, $7 per month patron tier, and $25 per month producer tier. Each tier comes with different levels of recognition on the podcast itself and gifts when you sign up. Our $7 per month patrons will receive a gift of a Major Pain coaster, and our $25 per month producers receive a Major Pain tote bag, both gifts made by my mom. Everyone who signs up on Patreon will gain access to monthly bonus episodes with myself and my partner Andy, where we talk about what's going on in our lives, updates on our health, and the movies and TV and books we are currently enjoying. You can learn more about our Patreon campaign and sign up to support this podcast at patreon.com/majorpainpodcast. Extra special thank you to our Patreon producers supporting this show at the highest tier of $25 per month: Steve Kavanaugh, Chris Fowler, Trish O'Brien, and Hipster Leia. Other great ways to support this podcast include clicking our affiliate links, which you can find in the show notes of this and every episode. That includes Rare Patient Voice, an amazing program where you can be paid for your time to participate in research studies and surveys. If you have a diagnosis of any kind or you are a caregiver, you qualify to participate in Rare Patient Voice. Sign up using our link, rarepatientvoice.com/majorpainpodcast. And if you participate in a research study or survey, you will earn an average of $120 per hour for your time. You can also support this show when you sign up for NeuroHealth. NeuroHealth is an online headache and neurology clinic where you can get the care you deserve without the wait. Head to neurohealth.co/majorpain to get a discount and support this podcast when you sign up. Or you can head to our Amazon shop, amazon.com/shop/majorpainpodcast. Our shop features products that I use to manage my chronic illness, and Major Pain will earn a commission on any purchases from this shop. Or you can start any Amazon shopping trip from our shop, go on to Amazon, purchase anything at all, and this podcast will still earn a commission. Follow Major Pain on social media. We are on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, all at Major Pain Podcast, where you can leave a comment on any episode and interact with other listeners of our growing community. And of course, don't forget to leave Major Pain a positive rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and most major podcast platforms. This show is intended as a free resource for anyone going through chronic illness and disability, to build community around experiences often lived in isolation, to break down the layers of societal ableism, and to help you navigate for your own personal health equity, and also just have a lot of fun. Thank you for checking out the Major Pain Podcast. Let's get to today's episode.
How lucky it is just to get through a day without pain.
If you look at me, it doesn't appear that I have a disability.
A test that comes back abnormal, it's like, yes, we're onto something here.
Welcome to Major Pain. I'm your host, Jesse Mercury, and this week I am so excited to be joined by Miguel. Miguel, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, man. Really excited to be here. Been looking forward to this one and excited to share my story and inspire people.
Yeah, awesome. We were just chatting a little bit. I am in Seattle and you are in Hawaii enjoying the nice weather. How is it over there?
It's beautiful. It is absolutely amazing, especially because I'm from Vancouver, Canada. It's wintertime right now. So very dark, cold, rainy. Here is complete opposite. So I feel revitalized. Lots of energy and very productive. It's amazing. I love it.
Awesome. Which island are you on?
Oahu.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's get to know you a little bit. So, Miguel, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Miguel Bautista. I run CFS Recovery, which is an organization. We help people recover from long COVID, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia. But outside of that, love traveling, love working out, exercising, hanging out with friends, play the guitar. And really the last 6 years of my life have been kind of a whirlwind in a good way, because that's pretty much when I recovered. I recovered about 6 years ago, got out of the hospital after not being able to walk for about 8 months. And since then, I feel like I've had a new lease on life. So I'm just trying to squeeze the most out of the lemon of life. Definitely very adventurous. And I love challenges. And actually, I'm in Hawaii because I was here for some personal development conference, or it was a workshop for 2 days. And then I find out there's a marathon the next day and I actually signed up for it. So I'm kind of crazy. I'm a little bit crazy and wild sometimes. And part of the reason I did that was just to prove to myself that, hey, you are actually fully recovered. You were not going backwards. I knew that, but I wanted to prove it, and to prove it to everybody else that, hey, you can go from completely bedridden and hospitalized and all that stuff. You can go run 10 kilometers on 7 hours notice and not have any symptoms after. So
Wow.
I'm kind of crazy.
It sounds like your chronic illness story has really changed the way that you think about life, which is so interesting. You know, on this show, we really focus on living with chronic illness and disability. I generally shy away from talking to people that haven't had that story because it really changes you and it changes how you think about the world. I'm excited to hear your story. I'm excited to dive into your history and hear about what you've lived through, because it sounds like you've lived through quite a bit. So let's jump back in time. Miguel, what is your major pain?
Well, my major pain was not being able to walk, not even being able to sit up in bed, having to get meals blended and having to drink it. And just, it was a really, really bad situation I was in. But, you know, with my story and a lot of people I've talked to thousands of people with this, like we work with them every day. CFS doesn't just pop up out of nowhere, right? It may feel like that at the time, but if you go back and look at your life, there were early signs that the body was struggling a little bit, you know, a little bit of sensitivity here, a little bit of food sensitivity there, a little bit of anxiety, insomnia, you know, a little bit of palpitations over there. So for me personally, this was a buildup of many, many years of living a certain way and thinking a certain way. A lot of what led me to hitting a complete wall was a lot of the pressure I put on myself. It was a type A personality that I had. It was extremely type A. It was very competitive growing up, very hyperactive growing up. I always had to be moving and running around. And I was a kid in class who could not sit still ever. Now, they didn't like give me meds to slow me down like they did with other kids, because I also got good grades. Because the only reason I got good grades was so I could continue, you know, being the crazy Miguel I was. So I kind of got away with it. But, you know, I was very into sports, very into lots of different activities. I try to stack my plate with as many things as possible. So my whole motto for life was I have to be as productive as possible. I don't want to waste any time, right? But when you think like that, you will push yourself to the absolute extremes and really put rest on the back burner. Okay, so that's good in some scenarios. It was good in school, good for sports. But when you do that for a prolonged period of time, eventually your body starts to go, okay, we need to slow down, calm down here. And so after high school, this kind of personality went to the extreme. It was like, okay, I'm doing door-to-door sales. I'm studying personal training. I'm doing everything I can to try to be quote unquote successful. And I was willing to sacrifice my health for it, whether that's staying up late, skipping meals to work more, anything you could think of to really try to get ahead. And so eventually there was this one day I was in the library, and at this time I was hooked on energy drinks, lots of energy drinks to keep me fueled. You know, so I wasn't even running on real energy. It was like an external source of energy. So one day I'm in the library studying these books, these sales books, as I'm on my work break. I was a personal trainer at the time, and then my heart starts to go crazy. Then I start hearing ringing in my ears. My vision gets blurry. The room starts spinning, and then I can't breathe. And then that's when my life changed forever. And for the next several years, I couldn't work out. Couldn't have a sip of alcohol, couldn't have a sip of caffeine. And that's when things really started to go downhill, because I went to the front desk, said, call the ambulance right now. I think I'm going to die. And they sat me down. Anyways, there were about 6 or 7 paramedics that came in, and I'm just sitting there not moving, but my heart rate is about 160 or 170.
Wow.
I think it was even 180, actually. I can't remember, but it was very high. It felt like I was sprinting. Right? That's how out of breath I was. And my blood pressure, it was like, it was like 150 over 50 or something, which means my heart would like pump really hard, but then it wouldn't cycle back properly. So anyways, it was just a mess. I literally thought I was going to die that that 30 minutes. So they're all coming in and they're trying to talk to me. You can't see straight, ringing in my ears. It felt like someone had a sledgehammer or like a hammer was just pounding my head from the inside out. Thought my blood vessels were going to explode. But anyways, went to the hospital. They run all these tests and scans, and then completely fine. They said nothing was showing up. I was, based on my tests, I was a perfectly healthy young 19-year-old. But that's
you were 19.
When the downward spiral. Yeah, I was 19. That's when the downward spiral started. And
yeah,
it was crazy.
Yeah. So, okay, we're talking about CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome, aka myalgic encephalomyelitis. So we have a sense of where this story is going, and regular listeners of this podcast will be very familiar with this disease. We've had several incredible episodes about it. But if you're 19 and you go to the doctor and you're having this, flare up of something, you don't know what it is. Nothing like this has ever happened to you before. The doctors run all these tests. Everything comes back normal. I can only assume that they just send you home and tell you you're fine. Is that what happened?
Correct. Well, actually, they told me to drink some Gatorade and eat bananas because my electrolytes were low. So It was maybe even worse than just telling me to go home. Because I mean, I was an athlete. I was football team captain, wrestling team captain in high school. I know what dehydration feels like. This was not dehydration.
Yeah.
But there was also some relief because they said, you're not going to die. You're fine. You'll be okay. So I thought this was going to be like a 3 or 4 day thing. Right now, I go home. I immediately throw away all my supplements, all my pre-workout, the energy drinks, stimulants, all that. I dump it in the garbage. I remember dumping it in the garbage bag, and there was like powder just shooting out. But the next 3 days, I didn't go to work because my heart was pounding so hard that day. My actual heart muscle was extremely sore, as if it just lifted weights. And I never had that before. That was actually pretty terrifying because my heart was sore. Every time it beat, it was like sore. So I was like, man, good thing I was an athlete, because who knows, maybe it would have just exploded. So I was terrified. But anyways, now starts the chain reaction domino effect of let's try to figure out what the heck that was.
Yeah.
Right. And it took me on a merry-go-round for quite a long time, as I'm sure people can relate to. You go through the gauntlet of medical testing, and you get your hopes up for a test thinking they're going to find something. You're waiting for the results. You're crossing your fingers that they're going to find what's happening so they can fix it. But then they come back and tell you, oh, you're perfectly fine. You know what? Let me pass you to this neurologist, which is that appointment's in 4 months. So just hang tight. So you wait. Next thing you know, you're going up and down in your health. Some days are manageable and tolerable. Other days you feel like you got hit by a truck. And now the symptoms start compounding on each other. So it's like, it's a mix of the physical symptoms increasing, but the anxiety increasing as well, because you don't know what the heck's going on. Like, first of all, the doctors don't know. You don't know. And then the next best thing is you try figuring this out on your own. So you go to good old Dr. Google.
Yeah.
And that's like pouring fuel on the fire right now. Because, I would search up, why is my heart skipping? And you go to some forums about that, it's not going to be pretty. Like, you're going to think you're having a heart attack, this and that. And, that only adds on more anxiety, which leads to more physical symptoms, right? I'm not saying this thing is all in your mind, but anxiety can absolutely amplify the symptoms that you feel. So anyways, I go through all these tests, and for the next, I'd say 3 years, it was like 4 years, I crash. Then I make my way back up, somehow get a little bit better, and I'm able to work again. And I work my way back up to pretty much full time. Then I get sick again after 6 months. I go off work for 6 months. I make my way back. And meanwhile, this whole time, I'm trying supplements, acupuncture, massage, treatments, naturopaths, like everything you could think of, diets, detoxes, cleanses, Reiki. I'm going to the emergency room every 6 to 8 months because I crash, because I think I'm having a stroke. And for those 4 years, I can't even tell you how many times I had to say no to so many opportunities. There were times when my friends wanted to go camping. I couldn't do it. They wanted to watch the fireworks. Couldn't do it. They wanted to go to the beach in the summer for a picnic. I couldn't do it. So here I am, 19, 20, 21 years old. And everybody else you're thinking, these are my golden years. Everybody else is having an amazing time. They're doing whatever. They're going on all these adventures. And I'm an adventurous person. And to say no to that and just be stuck at home in the summer. I remember there were summers where it's a beautiful day outside. Your friends are going to the beach. Your friends are going out for dinner. But you're having to stay at home, not because you want to, but because your body won't allow you to even step outside the house. Yeah. So as much as it is a physical challenge, I would say the mental and emotional challenge is even harder because it's the isolation that the doctors don't understand. Family doesn't understand. And your friends, they're like, oh, we thought you want to come with us. Don't you want to hang out with us? And you're like, yes, I do, but I can't. So it was 3 or 4 years of flip-flopping back and forth like that before I really hit a wall and things just went to a whole nother level with the health. But it's crazy.
I can totally relate to everything you're saying and co-sign what you're saying, that sense of isolation when your body is sort of trapping you at home and you don't know why it's happening is horrible. And on top of that, I'm wondering if you faced this, but I faced a lot of doctors blaming me for my symptoms, telling me it was something that I was doing and not believing me when I tried to express the severity of what I was experiencing and how what they were saying wasn't lining up with my experience of reality. And then we get to the medical gaslighting where they try to convince you that your version of reality isn't real. And when we're talking about your health and your body, there's nothing more disturbing than having doctor after doctor tell you that your experience of reality and your body isn't true and that you're causing these horrible things to happen to yourself. My sense of self started to erode when that happened for years for me. And, after a while, I started to question reality and I started to question if I was doing something that was causing my own illness. And that became a sort of anxiety disorder of its own that didn't exist before I got sick and became something that needed to be treated and managed that didn't exist before I started going to doctors for help. And it wasn't until I got a diagnosis and got medication and got better that I was fully able to put those thoughts and feelings to rest. And that's still a process of reminding myself that I can trust myself now. Is that something that you lived through, and what was that like for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the loss of identity. You don't even know who you are at that point because what you're going through, you can't even write this stuff up, right? It's kind of like you're living a nightmare. Mm-hmm. Doctors have no idea what's going on. Family doesn't know what's going on. Your friends don't know what's going on. You're feeling symptoms that the tests aren't showing exist. So you're thinking like, this can't be real. This is crazy. This must be a nightmare. Maybe I'm going to wake up tomorrow and things are going to be normal. And the amount of months and years I went to bed with that mindset of, no way, this is real. Like, I'm just going to wake up tomorrow and I'll probably be normal. Mm-hmm. You wake up and first thing you feel is pain and fatigue, and reality hits you. It starts to make you think like, okay, who am I? Because I'm not an athlete anymore. I can't work like I used to. I used to be this hyper competitive guy. Like whatever I touched would turn to gold in my world. And I was the kind of guy who could do anything he set his mind to. Now I can barely make food for myself. So who is this Miguel that I am right now? Who is Miguel even? Who am I? So there were so many times where I'd walk past a mirror in my house. I'd look in the mirror and I'd have those dark circles under my eyes, lose weight, or, the muscle was going away. And I just look at myself and be like, who is that? Like, where is Miguel? Because that's not him. That's not the person I knew. But, what's interesting on the flip side of this, it forces you to find out who you really are without all these labels and these I wouldn't say masks, but these identities you have about yourself. Because for me, I was walking around my whole life as the guy who got straight A's, the guy who could play the guitar in jazz band, this and that. And without all of those things, who are you? If you were to strip everything down, who are you at the core? And that's something that this illness forces you to look dead in the face. There's no way around it because you have plenty of time to yourself. When you're sitting at home, you can't do much, especially if you're crashing. And the only activity you can do is stare at the ceiling and you can't really move. You have to find this internal world and you have to find that place within, because physical world is a write-off. Like there's not a lot of things you can do when you're in a crash. So you are forced to go face to face with yourself. And there's this really famous quote. I remember reading it before I got sick, but this came up so many times. It's by Joseph Campbell. In the cave which you fear to enter lies the treasure you most deeply seek. So you have to go to the darkest corners of your own mind to figure out who you really are. And without a situation like this, I don't think anybody ever would look that deeply into themselves. You almost need some kind of catalyst, some kind of wake up call, or some kind of extreme event where you have no choice but to look inward. You only realize these things after you recover. But when you're in it, you're not seeing any of these things. You're just thinking, this is hell. I hate this. This is like, why me? You start feeling like a victim, which makes sense, because no one is helping you. So yeah, it's a pretty crazy journey we go on. I'm sure that was exactly what I'm talking about.
Beautifully said, and exactly how I feel. And one of the things that I love to highlight on this podcast is there are good things that come out of being this sick. And this is one of the biggest ones, is that you are forced to be stripped down and rebuild yourself and figure out, who are you? What is at your core? What really matters to you? What makes you happy? That was the big one for me, is that when I was so sick, I would just focus on, what can I do today that I like, or that feels good, or that makes me happy? And it could be as simple as, I'm going to watch every episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's like, what's the thing that helps you get through the day? I'm going to get in my wheelchair and go outside and get some sunshine. And you kind of strip down to like, what are the basics of what makes me happy? And you've probably never in your life really had to think about, what is it that makes you happy? Because you're so busy being productive and trying to prove yourself and trying to be something and make something of your life, that you think that happiness is this thing that's over the horizon. It's like, I'm going to be happy once I achieve. But when you can't achieve and you are stuck and you hurt and you aren't working, like both literally you aren't going to work and, metaphorically, like your body is not working in any way, you have to live in the day, in the moment, in the now, and try to figure out, is there any joy that can be had today? And the lessons that I learned from that have completely changed my life. And now that I have a diagnosis and I'm getting better, those things have stuck with me and have really improved my life moving forward. So yeah, I mean, a hugely powerful transformation can take place that can be a really, really good thing in your life outside of all of this suffering. And, I got to that place before I got better, where I started to realize all the good that could be brought from this and the way that I could start to be happy without getting better. And, completely transformed everything for me and has been a massively positive thing in my life. I'm curious, when on this journey did you first hear the words chronic fatigue syndrome? When did that come on your radar?
I came across that word about 2 years into my journey. I remember I was at home and I wasn't working. So this is probably midway through my journey. I heard about this chronic fatigue syndrome. Oh, that sounds exactly like what I have. But back in 2016, 2017, there weren't too many positive stories online about CFS. So me being like the typical CFS goer, I start Googling and I start reading about people's stories about this, all these forums, and the horror stories that I saw, I'm not saying I wish I didn't read it because I don't want to regret anything, but those threw me into a crazy loop. I mean, you're hearing people getting worse for 30 years, 40 years, or being in bed for 4 years. And I'm 20 years old at the time. I'm like, no, this can't be. Am I a statistic now? I'm one of those statistics. I never thought it would be me, but yeah, it looks like I am a statistics. I'm just unlucky. The universe decided to do this to me. And then you start getting into this really deep rabbit hole of, is this really going to be my life? Because there weren't a lot of recovery stories online back then. So that's the first time I came across CFS. And then I started researching more, and then I figured, no, sounds like adrenal fatigue. So then we started treating it as adrenal fatigue, did IV treatments, adaptogen supplements, detoxes. I actually did over 100 IV treatments over the course of about 2 years. Who's private health.
Okay, private health. So you're basically like paying for, is it a doctor or is it a naturopath? Who are you finding that is, prescribing these for you?
Yeah, it was a naturopath, and the amount of money I spent on that, I can't even remember. I think it was over $10,000. I think it was $15,000, like private health. So at that point, I mean, you're so desperate to do anything. Yeah. You're willing to go in debt. You're willing to sell your car. You're willing to do anything, because I think something you learn there going through all this is you cannot put a price on health. What I would give to have a normal day and feel no symptoms, take my car away from me. I don't care. Take all my clothes, take everything I own. If I could just have a shirt and shorts and walk down the street and breathe properly and feel okay. So yeah, I did over 100 IV treatments, but adrenal fatigue wasn't the root cause of this stuff. I did have adrenal fatigue, but there was something causing that. And I didn't realize until a lot further down the road that it was my hypersensitive nervous system that was driving all of these issues, including the adrenal fatigue. So, the hardest part of my journey actually was after about 3.5 or 4 years, eventually my body just hit a wall. Like this whole yo-yo, like get better, get worse thing, it was becoming more extreme as the years went on. So I would get better in the beginning, then I'd crash quite hard. Then I'd get a lot better, even better than before, and crash even harder. Then get better even than before and crash way, way harder. So I think it was the third or fourth time I made my way back up to full-time work. All of these times I crashed was basically my body trying to teach me a lesson of being like, Miguel, prioritize your health. You cannot just keep working and skip meals and not drink water and sleep late. Every time you do that, we're gonna teach you a lesson. But me being the young guy, I couldn't get the message until the fourth time where, I was going to these music festivals while working a ton, while not sleeping that much. I was in a new relationship at the time as well. So we were always, going on adventures, staying out late, until my body was like, okay, enough is enough. We're putting a stop to this party. It's getting out of control. Right? I wasn't doing any drugs or anything. I wasn't even drinking. It was just too much physical stress on my body. So I remember I crashed really hard, thought I had a stroke or something, but I called my grandma. I said, hey, I cannot function. Can I go live there for a week? She's like, yeah, of course. So I go there for a week. I can't even really move in bed. I could barely make it. She's cooking for me, feeding me, wiping me down, helping me brush my teeth. A week goes by. I'm even worse the next week. I crash again just by trying to go to the washroom. 3 weeks goes by. I'm even worse. Now I can't even roll over in bed without my heart rate shooting through the roof. A month goes by, 2 months, 3 months. The months go on, and I'm not getting any better. There's no solutions for this. Or it feels like they're having to do pretty much everything for me. So my grandma and grandpa were like 75 years old at the time. So there was also guilt, because now I'm seeing them working their butts off, trying to keep me alive. And I remember my grandpa was saying every day he'd come back from work, I'd hear that door swing open. He'd come upstairs and he'd say, Miggy, when are you getting better? We need to go play golf. We need to play golf. We need to play golf every single day. And they were very religious. So they pray over me every night. They pray for a miracle. That's what they would say every night. And so the months go on, Christmas goes by. I remember I was like paralyzed on Christmas. Everybody was downstairs opening presents. I had to wear earplugs and a blindfold. Just hearing the presents open give me migraines. And so, I developed a very close relationship with my grandparents. And the crazy part was about 6 months into that whole ordeal, my grandpa, who's taking care of me, cooking for me, feeding me, giving me reassurance, every day asking me, you got to hurry up and get better so we could play golf. I had a Holter monitor appointment when I first moved in with them. And my grandpa was supposed to get a Holter monitor like years prior to that. So he saw me get it. He wheeled me in with a wheelchair to the hospital. Of course, my heart was completely fine, even though it skipped 300 times in 24 hours. They're like, oh, you're within normal ranges. So he saw me get a Holter monitor and he said, oh, it's just that simple? Okay, well, I've been overdue for one. Let me get that. This is when I first moved in. So he gets it the very next day. They call him. I was in the room when they called him. And they said, look, you're going to die any day right now. You're a ticking time bomb. Your blood levels are so messed up. You need to go on heavy medication and you're probably going to die within 6 months. And he just kind of chuckled. He laughed. He was like, oh, okay. So anyways, I see him deteriorating as he's taking care of me. So the guilt is building up. His teeth are falling out. He gets gout flare-ups like every week. Very sick. And about 6 months into this, I felt something was going to happen. I just knew it. Like you get very heightened to a lot of different senses. You have a heightened sensation, sensory thing. You can kind of see things when they happen when you're in the state. But I felt like my grandpa was going to go. So I get a call one day. My dad calls and says, hey, Lolo, my grandpa, he had a stroke. He's probably not going to make it. You should probably go visit him in the hospital. I said, I can't even move. I'm drinking through a cup. I'm drinking my meals through a cup. And he said, okay. Then I called him again. I said, you know what? I don't care if I die. I have to go see him because he has been keeping me alive for the past 6 months with my grandma. So he comes back, wheels me in a wheelchair to the car, dumps me in there. And I remember my whole family was in there in that emergency room. And you could hear the beeper for his heart rate. They wheel me up to him and, I hold his hand. And my dad said, in the Philippine culture, there's this thing, there's a really sick person in the family and someone else passes away. It's almost like they give their energy. So there's some kind of miracle that happens. And the moment they rolled me up to him and I held his hand, he flatlined. But I felt this huge surge of energy. It was like too much energy. I could almost see it. Like there were these colors that were just flowing into me. I felt like I was going to explode. Anyways, my heart rate shoots up to like 200. I'm pretty sure I had like a panic attack, but it was one of the most profound experiences I've had. And
wow,
still have a picture of that day in the hospital. But anyways, he passed away. It was obviously a big stressor on me because, 1 day this guy's wiping me down and brushing my teeth. The next day I'm holding his hand as he's dying. As he passes away, crosses over. So, I was broken at that point, but he actually visited me that night. I was just really sad, but I had a special connection with him because we had spent 6 months very close proximity together talking. And he told me, Miggy, don't worry about me. I'm in a better place now, but I'm going to help you get better. I promise you're going to be better. You're going to be walking. You're going to have your life back, but just promise me that you're going to take care of Lola, which is my grandma. Promise me you're going to take care of her. I said, of course, I'll do anything. And I was so sad. I was like, I'm sorry, couldn't get better. We couldn't play golf. And he was just laughing. It's like, it's fine. And the reason I know this wasn't all in my head is because my dad saw it too. I was in the room when he came by and my dad was beside me. I was bawling my eyes out. And then all of a sudden, lying there, my left side gets cold, like ice cold. My dad feels, he's like, yeah, it's cold. And I felt my grandpa standing right there. And next thing you know, my dad's eyes, I've never seen him so surprised. Like his eyes were huge. It looked like he saw a ghost. And I guess he did see a ghost because he said, He was standing right there. And then just to confirm, we both said, okay, what was he wearing? Let's count on three. 1, 2, 3. A polo shirt. Both said it. I'm like, okay. What color was the polo shirt? 1, 2, green.
Wow.
What? Okay. What color were the buttons on the polo shirt? 1, 2, 3. White. How many buttons were there? 3.
Wow.
So we both kind of confirmed it in real time. But I got a lot worse after that because you can imagine the stress I was going through. Ended up in the hospital, and that's a whole nother story. But anyways, I was in the ICU for a month, actually, intensive care unit. I could write a whole book on just that experience, but they couldn't find anything, of course. I was still really sick. So after that, they said, you know what? Your organs are fine. Like you're not going to die. You're clearly going through something. So you have 2 options here. One, we send you home and you could come back and forth to the hospital every day to work with, a psychiatrist here. Right? At this point, I'm like, any solutions you have on the table, I am willing to try. Any medication, I don't care. Sure, I'll talk to a psychiatrist. I don't care. Because at this point, I am borderline death right now. So they said, option 1, you go back and forth every day. Option 2, Miguel, we have plenty of extra rooms in the psychiatric ward for you. You could stay there as a volunteer. You could go home anytime, but at least you won't have to, ride a car back and forth, and you'll be able to work with a doctor every day without traveling. Like, okay, I'm not crazy. I don't think I belong there, but I don't see any other choice. So we said, okay, we'll try it out. We'll try just one day to start. So anyways, I go in there, and that's when things really turned around for me, actually, because I was able to start working with my doctor every day. I saw a lot of crazy stuff in there too. I made a lot of friends as well. And it was interesting because although a lot of these people that, they weren't there cognitively fully, I was just happy to be able to talk to other people who were at least in a similar position as me. Like they're cooped up in here. They kind of lost their livelihoods because a lot of them were just regular people. Something snapped in their brain, and next thing you know, they're in the psych ward, right? And they weren't able to return to normal. But I made really good friends with the people there, and it showed me that whatever I was going through, at least I had my own mind, right? There were so many times where I was going crazy. When you don't sleep for 10 days, you start to hear voice stuff. But at least I could think straight. At least I knew who I was. I knew my family. I had memories and everything. Some of these people, they were gone. They were gone for the most part. Sometimes they'd snap back into reality, but I was able to make friends with them. It was the first time in 8 months I sat up at a table to eat breakfast with people, despite having the symptoms. But that's when my doctor really taught me why I was feeling all these things. And that's when it turned around for me, right? And he essentially told me, your body, your brain is trying to protect you from yourself. All of these symptoms were to stop you from doing all of these different activities you were doing because you were just pushing the limit too hard. Problem with you, Miguel, is your mindset was too strong. When you were physically tired, you would just power through. When you wanted to sleep, you just power through. So it is a double-edged sword. That's why you burnt out. So essentially, we need to recalibrate your survival center and show it that all these sensations that you're feeling, you're not going to die. And we need to retrain your nervous system so that's not it's not hypersensitive. Because at this point, light could cause a migraine. Closing a door could trigger extreme pain in my body. Someone touching my arm would send shock waves of pain through my body, like I was being electrocuted. So over the next 4 weeks, I worked my way up from bedridden to a wheelchair. And that was amazing. I worked my way up from a wheelchair to a walker, and then a walker to walking on my own 2 feet. And then within a month, it was the day after my 23rd birthday. It's March 29th, 2018. They released me from the hospital, and that's when my second life began. So that's really when my life started. I feel like it was 6 years ago after getting out.
Wow. So were you ever diagnosed with CFS, or is that something that you, looking back, just kind of within your own research, feel that that is the most accurate descriptor of what happened to you?
It's interesting. They diagnosed me with multiple things.
Yeah.
And they had so many names for it. They said somatiform dysfunction, panic disorder. And I'm the one who I asked him, I'm like, so this sounds a lot like CFS. Is this the same thing? He said, yeah, no, this is the same thing, CFS. So on paper, there's like a few different names for it, but they gave me like a few different labels. But yeah. CFS.
I know that often with CFS, there is some sort of illness that precedes it, like a viral illness. Mono is a common one. Looking back in your history, was there anything like that?
Yeah, actually, I did get a parasite right before that big crash. Wow. But essentially, what we've found is, everybody has a stress threshold of how much your nervous system can handle. A lot of people get CFS, they are hovering right below that threshold. So all it takes is a virus or a cold or food poisoning or something for that to tip the scales, for it to go over its threshold. And now your nervous system is in this downward spiral because it's in fight or flight mode. So it's not necessarily that one thing that did it, but it's an accumulation of all those stressors. But that one thing, that cold, that virus, was the final straw that broke the camel's back, that made people go over that threshold.
Yeah. The bucket theory, that your nervous system is a bucket, and when it gets full, it can start to overflow. Or if there's a virus or a parasite or something, it can poke a hole into the side of it. So you can literally start to lose your life essence out the side of your bucket and never be able to get filled up again. It sounds like your grandfather refilled your bucket with his own life essence and maybe gave you some juice to keep going and keep fighting. Is that what it felt like?
Yeah, definitely. It more so, I think it gave me a lot of inspiration and hope and a vision for the future. It kind of reignited that spark. I wouldn't say he necessarily gave me physical energy, because after he passed away, the next 2 months, month and a half, it was downhill. It was crazy. And it gave me that spark, though. It gave me a reason, because he said, you need to get better. I'm going to help you get better because you need to take care of Lola. And I was like, okay, I can't give up. I have to do that. I made a promise. And what's interesting is, after I got out of the hospital, about 2 months after that, my grandma got diagnosed with cancer. The one who was taking care of me, she was cooking my food, feeding me and everything. So the tables turned. I was now driving her to her chemo appointments, and I was helping her do her shopping. I was buying food for her, helping her, pushing her in a wheelchair. When 4 months prior, she was pushing me in a wheelchair and spoon feeding me. So it's so crazy how that works. And that's when I knew, okay, it was another confirmation that this wasn't in my head, that I had this conversation with my grandpa, who's deceased.
Yeah.
It's because he specifically told me, make sure you take care of Lola. And he showed me this picture of pushing her in a wheelchair. 4 months later, I was taking care of her.
Yeah. Wow. Your story is incredible. It's also very unique from ones that I've heard on the podcast. We've only talked to one other person with CFS that I can remember off the top of my head who is fully recovered. And for him, it was a medication, low-dose naltrexone, which I can see you're familiar with, that really helped him kind of get his nervous system to stop overreacting to things and to sort of get back on his feet. And yours is so unique in that it sounds like you just did all of this internal work to get to know your body in a way that you hadn't before, get to know your nervous system and realign yourself and recenter yourself and find a way to get this overactive nervous system to calm down and to go back to a baseline similar to what it was before, I'm guessing.
I actually took some medication.
You
they
did
gave
too?
me some
Okay.
medication in the hospital. Yeah.
Yeah.
And essentially it was to dampen the sensitivity of the nervous system.
Okay.
So it was, so it wasn't as reactive to stimulus. They gave me an SSRI as well as an anti-anxiety, which was Ativan in the beginning. And then I would say that did help me quite a bit.
Yeah.
But, I told my doctor, look, I don't want to be on this stuff forever. I don't want to rely on this. And I don't want it so that if I go off this well, now I have CFS again. And he was like, no, look, this medication, this is going to account for maybe 5% of your recovery, maybe 10. Okay. 90% of this, what's going to really give you lasting change and a sustainable recovery and truly give you your life back is when you put in the work. You have to do the rewiring of your brain. You have to practice this neuroplasticity. You need to retrain these neural pathways in your brain. The medication will offer you a window to do that because you're not going to be so distracted with 20 out of 10 symptoms. Like it won't be as extreme. You're still going to feel a lot of symptoms, but if you rely on this medication to take you out, you're not going to recover. And that's the problem I see with a lot of people. So, a lot of people ask me, oh, what medication should I take? What should I do this? Like, okay, well, first of all, get the basics down, right? 90 to 95% of your recovery is going to be what you do internally. This other external stuff, it's going to be a little booster, but it's not going to be the thing that keeps you healthy. I've seen so many people take medication, but not do the inner work, the rewiring and neuroplasticity, and they crash even harder, right? And they rely on this external thing. And I think that's where it could be an interesting conversation. Is medication good or it's bad? Depends on how you use it, but it can definitely be a tool. Absolutely. LDN, I've heard great things about it. Same with some other things. But a lot of times it's kind of like playing Russian roulette too, because I've also seen it do the opposite, where they have like an allergic reaction. But it's a risk you take when you're in dire situations. You're willing to take that risk, and sometimes it really pays off.
Yeah. It's very, very fascinating to think about. The balance between medication and neuroplasticity and the conscious rewiring of the way that your brain is working to try to address an overstimulation of the nervous system, which is hugely important and something that I think is often overlooked. So in the last 6 years, how has your life changed? And then tell us about the work that you now do.
Oh man, the last 6 years have honestly been like a movie. Even just this year, it feels like just this year alone, I've done more than I thought I would do in my entire lifetime when I was sick. Okay, so there was a point where when I was sick and bedridden, I told myself, look, if I could just walk outside without symptoms, like literally cut my legs off, put me in a wheelchair, if I could just feel normal, I would be the happiest person ever. And then as as humans work, once you get there, you want more. But the last 6 years has been a ride. When I first got out of the hospital, I started a video production business. I was a videographer because I'd been bedridden for so long. So I was living in my head. So now I had to get these ideas out of my head because there's so many ideas swimming up there. So I started creating videos as like an expression of all this creativity I had stored in there. So I did that for about 3 and a half, I'd say 3 years. And it was a great time. Met a lot of great people, flew to a lot of different places for video projects. And then about 3 years ago, I thought, you know what? I've created thousands of videos. I know how marketing works. I know how to create content, and I have an amazing story to share and a solution that could help people. So let me just share my experience online and start talking about what I went through, the symptoms I dealt with and how I solved them and how I recovered. And immediately within a week of making my first few videos, I felt the momentum building. I saw real people in the comments section saying, hey, this is helping so much. Can you please make more videos? And I just felt a deeper connection with this work than a video production company. This hit a lot closer to home and it was a lot more fulfilling. I also told myself when I was sick, if I ever got better, I have to go back and try to help more people, and now that I had the tools to do it, I went all in. So, the last 6 years, I've been able to, how many times have I traveled? I've been on more than 60 flights in the past 6 years. This year alone, I've been on, I think, 30 flights, a lot of different cities, a lot of different places. And the biggest difference is the way I view life. It's very different from how it was before. And it's interesting because I'm more productive now than I was before, but it feels like I'm trying. I used to try 10 times harder to get, 10% of the results. Because now I feel like I'm more in line with my vision, number one. But number two, I don't view things as things that I have to do or that I need to do. I look at them as things that I want to do. Because when you're at a place where you literally feel like you're on your deathbed and you come face to face with perceived death so many times, you realize that every second you're alive after that, that's icing on the cake. Like me, I'm lucky to even be alive. My story very easily, or in my mind, it should have ended 6 years ago. So all these last 6 years has been a bonus. It makes it makes it a lot easier to be grateful for the simple things. And, I find that a lot more present in the moment now as well.
Yeah.
Before I used to just be rushing through life. Now it's more appreciative.
Yeah. So I know this is a complicated topic, but when you are trying to help other people with their chronic illness story, with their chronic illness journey, if you're trying to help someone else recover, what is your basic framework that you're working with?
That's a great question. So this was a difficult task at first because I knew what worked for me, like 100% it worked for me, but this is going to work for other people. So I started just putting out videos of things that worked for me just to see if people resonate with it and then to try it on their own. And then it seemed like it was working. So I thought, let's take it a step further. Okay, let's just talk to some people for free on Instagram and start coaching them, and just give them some advice. So did that for a couple of weeks. Seemed to really help. Okay, let's take it a step further. So I'm really just testing this stuff. I knew it worked for me, but let's test it little by little to see if it works on other people. Then I started doing one-to-one calls. I think I did 5 free one-to-one consultations and it helped. So I said, okay, all right, well, let's do some paid coaching. So I did about 20 paid one-to-one calls. And then I found that I was giving the same advice to all these different people. And the advice basically, to sum it up, there's a few main principles that if you understand this, then it makes it 100 times easier to recover and you will recover. As long as you have had your tests and scans done, you've seen doctors, you've had your blood tests, and they can't find any explanation for your symptoms, but you're feeling the symptoms, this stuff is going to work, right? So number one, it's understanding the stress threshold, right? Because when you understand why you even got here in the first place, the fact that you went over your stress threshold, it's going to start to make sense, right? And you start to realize, okay, what are the things I need to reduce to get under that limit, right? So understanding stress threshold, number one. Number two, it's understanding that the problem we're trying to solve here is a hypersensitive nervous system, right? So it consolidates 20, 30 different problems of symptoms into one problem. So you have this umbrella, this big umbrella, hypersensitive nervous system issues. Then you have like all these symptoms under that: palpitations, chronic pain, headaches, dizziness, vertigo, insomnia, food sensitivity, IBS, all that stuff. It goes under this one umbrella. So instead of solving 25 different problems, taking supplements and medications for 25 different problems, you're just solving one problem. So it simplifies the process. That's the big one. And the golden rule in recovery is your success is determined by how well you respond to symptoms. Because every time you have symptoms, it's either going to put you on a downward spiral, or it could be the springboard to get you to the next level. If you could be a catalyst for an upward spiral. Because as you respond better to symptoms, you are retraining neural pathways in your brain that are away from fight or flight mode. Because right now, almost everything can cause fight or flight reactions. So you need to consciously and manually train your brain to go down a different path. So it's understanding the stress threshold, the hypersensitive nervous system, and how to deal with those symptoms, flare-ups, which is responding well to symptoms. Those are the 3 main frameworks, but obviously we have like dozens of things that fit into that. But it really worked. It started to work for those coaching calls. So I thought, you know what? I just, this one day I had 5 one-on-one coaching calls in a row. And I just said the same thing. for 5 hours straight. Let me put them into a group. I'll be able to save my energy so I don't burn out, but also, we'll be able to help more people. So got them into a group. It was working, right? So we did that. Then we had a second group start a couple months later. They were doing better. Had another group start 2 months later. They were doing better. So each time I was building upon the program, the system, essentially. I was trying to create this system that I knew worked for me, but how is it going to work for other people at scale? Whether it's one person in there or there's like 100 people in there, right? So a lot of it came down to, okay, how do I build this freaking thing, right? So there was a lot of business on the back end, like systems, processes, automations, like creating private chats for people, creating a video journal for them to record their journey. So we have that with people. But fast forward 3 years where we are today, now we've had a couple thousand people go through the system. We've had hundreds of recovery stories. We have an extremely high success rate, 90 plus percentile. And now probably the most exciting thing we've worked on and we've built is almost like the software for CFS. So essentially we were able to take this data from somebody and put it into a dashboard. What are their symptoms, their activity levels, their history? What are their roadblocks? What are their challenges? What are their goals? Their living situation? How does their mind think? Are they more extreme? And if they are extreme, are they, extreme in doing too much or doing too little? So there's so many factors that we've worked on this for the past year and a half, spent hundreds of hours on this with our entire team every single week developing this. But now we can have a full-on dashboard of where somebody is at. And on the back end of that, we have an entire playbook. It's like over 100 pages long of exactly what to do in every different scenario, whether someone's bedridden or they're couch bound or house bound, and also what their personality is like. And from that, we have certain protocols that we follow to build a specific plan for them. And then with the help from the coaches, we help them implement that plan. Because that's one thing that was missing in the space. It's like a lot of what I see online is, hey, watch these videos. All right, now go apply it. Go do this exercise. Okay, it's not personalized though, right? People need that personalization because everybody's different. So that's a really exciting thing we've built out, and we've been testing it, and it's been working amazing. And also the community, just when people are in a like-minded community of people who are solution focused, who want to recover and are willing to put in the work, it makes it so much easier to stay on track, right? Versus being on these forums where people are just basically talking about how horrible the illness is without some kind of solution. Or the solution is try this medication, try that. That's not a long-term solution. So now we've built it to the point where, we have different recovery systems for people on different parts of their journey. We have free content, we have paid content, we have different tiers of the program depending on how much support you need. But we actually just did our Thriver meetup as well. I did a tour in Europe, meeting up with a bunch of people who recovered using this system, and it was really cool. Because a lot of those people were bedridden not too long ago, and here we were at the park telling stories. Some of them, we went out and drank some beers after when they couldn't walk before, and we're just sharing stories. So it's really cool to see it making a big difference. And I think with CFS, the notion has been for decades that you can't recover from this. This is a lifelong illness, and you just have to maintain your health. Well, wow. I'm here to prove that wrong. And I actually did it this weekend because I signed up for that marathon on 7 hours notice. And my mission is to show people you can absolutely get your life back and surpass where you were before. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, it's amazing that like after what you've lived through, it not only has it changed your life personally, but it has given you this sense of purpose and this mission that you're now enacting every day. And it's turned into this new career for you where you're helping other people to recover. I mean, that's got to feel so incredible. And also surprising to have to live through this like journey through hell to get to this point where it's opened up your eyes to what life can be and given you this sense of gratitude and this sense of being grounded in the present moment and actually enjoying and being grateful for your day-to-day life. I want to hear about where people can go to connect with your program, but before we do, I have one last question for you. So you've been on a remarkable journey, and wow, I mean, thank you so much for telling it to us today. What an incredible story that I'm so excited to be able to share on this platform. But given everything that you've lived through, if you could go back in time and appear to yourself at 19 years old, the day before this whole journey is going to start, if there was a message from the future that you could bring to yourself in the past, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a really good question. What do I go back and tell myself at 19? I would tell myself to trust the process. Trust the process. And yeah, that's what I would say. I would say trust the process. Because at the time when your world is falling apart, you're thinking, oh, this is horrible. This is bad. Why me? But looking back now, I'm so grateful for everything I went through, because without hitting that rock bottom, it wouldn't allow me to appreciate all the times I have now. Now I travel as much as I can because I know life is not promised. Tomorrow is not promised, right? I could have been gone 6 years ago. So now I live my life, and I value experiences more than material things. I value experiences with people more than accolades or, accomplishments. Because at the end of the day, I've been in that spot where feels like I'm on my deathbed. The only thing that I was thinking about when I was looking death in the face was all of the laughs I had with my friends, all the nice dinners I had with my family. That time I was 8 years old and I was at a campfire with my dad watching the stars. That's what I remembered. I didn't remember winning a wrestling tournament or getting the straight A's or, being a top personal trainer in the company. I didn't care about that. So without that perspective of that dark, I wouldn't be able to see the light like how I see it now. So you need that other side of the coin to make you appreciate your life after that. So I'll say one quote here. Steve Jobs said it. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. And when I see all the craziness of the last decade of my life, because I'm 29 now, just 10 years ago when I got sick, the ups and downs, when I look back in hindsight, it all makes perfect sense. And it went perfectly according to plan by the universe to put me where I'm at today. And now I'm living my dream life. But this wouldn't have happened if I didn't go through those lessons that I needed to learn. So I see it as the best thing that ever happened to me. The worst thing, but also the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah. I love this. I'm thinking about my own journey. If I had gone back to myself and said those words to myself, I think implicit in that message is also trust yourself. You are sick. There is something wrong. And I'm here from the future to tell you that if you trust this process, you'll make it and something will change. And in that message, I think, is the implication that, yes, you can trust yourself. And I think that, for me, that would be one of the most valuable things to hear, is if I could go back and tell myself, trust yourself, this is real, because that's the thing that was in question for so long for me. Like, is this in your head, or is this a physical problem? Is this a medical problem or a psychological problem? And oftentimes, those two things are intertwined. And
absolutely.
Yeah, to put one of them down or to say, oh, it's only one or the other is doing yourself a bit of a disservice. And I'm so frustrated that I was in this position where I was sort of forced to either be one or the other, which sort of rips you in half. And when doctors are only willing to treat you if you are one, and if you are the other, they send you to another person, and that pulls you out of the medical pipeline. That's terrifying. That is terrifying. And I was so scared of that the entire time, because there was definitely moments in my journey where if like medical care was water coming out of a hose, they just turn the hose off and say, well, you don't get that anymore. You got to get a psychological evaluation and you no longer get medical care. And it's just so segmented and regimented where it's one or the other, when in fact, these conditions are full body, full mind conditions that affect every aspect of yourself. You know, I love the term biopsychosocial. Pain is a biopsychosocial condition. It affects all three of these pillars of your life. So having to rip those apart, you kind of have to rip yourself apart and just hope for the best. And it's just terrible, you know?
Yeah.
But I think the big takeaway that I've had from your story is how important it is for those two things to be together. That when you are treating your body, you also need to treat your mind. And whoever you are, if you are in chronic pain, if you have chronic fatigue, if your body's not working, that impacts your mental state. And you can't just ignore that, you know? And doctors are so obsessed with this causal relationship. But if you are the person living in the body, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what came first. The mental stress, the physical stress, they're both happening. And you can only have benefit by putting those halves of yourself together and treating both of them. Miguel, thank you so much for an incredible podcast today. Please tell our listeners where they can go to connect with you and your program online.
Yeah, you guys can find more of my content on YouTube at CFS Recovery, as well as Instagram, CFS Recovery. And we're putting out tons of content, lots and lots of recovery stories. Right now, you know, I have close to 100 recorded. About 80 of them are live right now. Maybe at the time of this video, there's more, but lots of inspiration. I basically share everything I know about recovery, everything we teach in the programs as well, on the YouTube channel. So pretty much any symptom you're dealing with, any challenge, any obstacle you're dealing with, if you're dealing with CFS or even long COVID, fibromyalgia, you know, those are the exact people we created this recovery system for. So you can find us there, go watch the free YouTube videos. And if you need more help, then you can learn more about our different programs in the links in the descriptions. But, you know, we're just here to help heal the world and help more people get out of this suffering that they don't need to be going through, because now there is a solution for this. So, you know, I'm just here to spread the knowledge and information that changed my life, that changed most of our team. They went through CFS, they were in the program, and now they're helping others to change their life. It's changing lives right now with hundreds of people in the program, and hopefully changes your life too if you implement it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being so open with your story. I mean, it is an incredible story. There's so much to it, and these beautiful spiritual moments within your story as well, and so much love in your story. I mean, this relationship with your grandparents really just is going to stay with me. Such a beautiful part of your story. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I want to share just one last thing here, maybe some inspiration for people here. You know, if they're listening to this story or they're seeing things online about people recovering and they're thinking, well, maybe they had something special. Like, what if it doesn't work for me? What if I'm a unique case? And that's what I thought too. That's what every single person who goes through CFS, they think that exact same thing, right? But you'd be surprised at how much can change in a short window of time. I mean, even just 1 or 2 years down the road, you could go from bedridden to traveling, hopping on a plane, working full time, doing your dream job. I'm 6 years out of the hospital, right? 6 years ago, I was in the hospital in a wheelchair. I just ran a mini marathon a few days ago on 7 hours notice at the same place. That was one of the first vacations I went on after I got out of the hospital. So it's coming full circle, but I look at my life now and how it was 6 years ago, and your life after you recover, I promise you, it's going to surpass all of your dreams and visions. It's going to be like 100 times better than what you hoped it would be, because now you're going into life with a new mindset. You're more appreciative, you're more grateful, and you're able to balance things better. So just know it does get better, and it is absolutely possible to recover from this. Just go watch the stories online, and if they can do it, then you can too. So don't ever give up. Keep on going.
Amazing. Great words to end on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Major Pain. I'm Jesse Mercury, your host and the producer of this podcast. Artwork by Egg Salad Salad. Our theme music is the song Time Machine from my synth-pop album, Sci-Fi, now streaming everywhere. Support this show on social media, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, all at Major Pain Podcast. If you have questions or comments you'd like to share with myself, our guests, or our listeners, send an email to majorpainpodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit our website to learn more about this show, support its creation, or comment on any episode at majorpainpodcast.com. Major Pain is supported by our listeners on Patreon. Thank you to our $2 per month supporters, our $7 per month patrons Naomi Adele Smith, Sonny Roberts, Kelsey Matson, Alexandria Henderson, Justin Minnick, Laura Stevens, Heather Muncie, and Robert, and our $25 per month producers Steve Kavanaugh, Chris Fowler, Trish O'Brien, and Hipster Leia. Learn how you can support this podcast while receiving special recognition on the show, gifts, and monthly bonus episodes at patreon.com/majorpainpodcasts.